Hello, welcome to pre-calculus. Go ahead and open your books to page. Let me go ahead and see what page that is. That is 424. I have this. Hopefully you can pause it anytime in this video so you can see what's going on over here. These are the steps to graph all of these sines and cosine. Again, if you don't understand, always try to take it one step at a time. I have everything labeled for you. I have everything color coordinated so we can go a step at a time. We're going to be doing this for today and the next lesson, and we're going to be doing this for 2 days for you so you guys can have a better understanding on it. I will have homework on the bottom here for next week. I think this is Friday's video. I don't know. So I will have the homework assignment for the following week. I'll have it down here on the box. I'll have the whole week listed, so it's right there in front of you, and I'll have it for every day of that week in the video so you know what you need to do. And we have to make sure we're always diligent. Don't just write random answers. In the end, we're going to have all of this collected. We're going to have stacks like this, so it shouldn't be like this. It should be something like that. Also keep in mind, I have a quiz after every chapter. So every time we finish lesson 5.1, lesson 5.2, it's going to be about every 3 days. You'll have a test. So the next test will be probably Monday. Yeah, that's going to be your next test. So every 3 days, remember, there's always a quiz. Some of you haven't done it. I have a record of who has done it, who hasn't done it, and that's going for your grades. So that's an actual grade. So make sure you're going through them, going and answering every question possible. Here, we're going to go ahead and discuss this here. It is step by step. Make sure you're looking at every step carefully. Sine, cosine. So up there, we have sine and cosine. Sine, the pattern is 0 up, 0 down, 0 up, 0 down, 0 up, 0 down. It always starts at 0. The cosine starts when you're heading up, so A, but it depends. If it's a negative, so negative 2 cosine of x, that means your minimum maximum value, you'll start at the opposite, which is negative A. But typically for cosines, if they're positive, it's up, 0, down, 0, up, 0, down, 0, or A, 0, negative A, 0, A, 0, negative A, 0. So all of them have a sentence pattern. Here for the steps, everything color coordinates. A is your amplitude, minimum, maximum. So we already did that in the video previously. 2 is our period, so that's your B. It's your period, so 2 radians divided by B, or 2 times 180 divided by B. So B is a number right here, so right before the parentheses. Here, to find your period, you'll have that number, and then you divide it into 4 parts so you can see the increments of your graph. Third one is to find your shift. You'll be dealing with x minus radians over 2, radians over 3, 3 radians over 4. Here, if it's x minus whatever, so it's whatever is between the parentheses, then you're going to have a horizontal shift. If you have x minus h, it's a shift to the right, and it's positive, so you're going to be adding. So let's say the normal period was 360 divided to 4 parts, that's 90. So that means we're going to have increments of 90 here. If we have somewhat of a shift, so now they're adding 90 more, so you're not going to be starting at 0. Now you're going to be starting on 90. So here, you find your periods, and then, you get your answers. After you do that, you find your shift. Your shift will always be here, and you see in the next 2 examples, we have some sort of shift. So then you add it onto your other ones. And then your fourth, this is where it's different because we have a shift in the periods, so it's going to move everything left or right. We have to find our starting point or ending point for our graph. So here, to find your starting point, you're taking this section here, you're setting it equal to 0 because normally for normal graphs, so sine of x, you always start at 0. So you have whatever you have here, you set it equal to 0, and then you solve for it. That's going to be your starting point. Your ending point, same exact thing, b times x minus h. You're going to set it equal to 360 because a whole period normally is like a unit circle. It starts at 0, it ends at 360. But since it's shifting, it's going to be adjusting that. Number 1, or example 4, sorry. Y equals 3 sine 2 times x minus 45. So radians, I don't like radians personally. I convert it to degrees. To convert it to degrees, it's 180, so it's your radians, divided by 4, which is 45. So we have 3 sine of 2 times x minus 45. First, find your minimum maximum value. That's your first number up front that's multiplying into the sign. Not the first number. Sometimes it's the first number. I don't want to say first number every time, but it's a number multiplying into your trig function. So that is 3. So that means your minimum maximum is 3 and -3, but keep in mind you're starting at 3. 2, find your period. To find your period, you do 2 times 180 divided by b. B is a number after the sign. So whatever the number is multiplying into the parentheses. So that's 2. So 2 times 180 divided by 2, let me get my marker out. There it is. You get 180. So now I have here 1/4 of 180, going to be multiplying that. And then you get, let me see my paper here. Then you get 45. Half of 180. So you're going to be multiplying this number into every parts because you're trying to find 4 parts. You just try to find that shift and see how it looks. So half of 180 is 90. 3/4 of 180, so 1/4, 2/4, 3/4 is 2. It's 135. And 4/4 times 180 is just 180. So now we have our periods. We have 45, 90, 135, and 180. But now we have a shift. So it's different like what we did from the previous video. We have a shift of 45 units. So it's an x minus 45. If we go back here again, I would screenshot this. If it's x minus h, you're shifting to the right. And that means you're adding the number of units to your original one. The book has a different way you divide. You find your starting, your ending point, you divide into 4 parts. I feel like this way is a lot easier. So you have your shift. So you have x minus h, you're shifting to the right. That means you're going to be adding whatever your shift is. So I'm going to be adding 45 to each one of these. Oops. Oh, no, I'm going to do it. Here, normally I put the 0 here because we always start at 0. So we don't have it here, we don't show it here. But I'm going to put the 0 here because we're also adding 45 to that as well. Because remember, our starting point is 0, but remember, we're not starting at 0 anymore. We're shifting 45 degrees to the right. So now our starting point is not 0. So to find each of these, add 45 to all of these. So I'm adding 45, I get 45, I get 90, I get 135, I get 180, and I get 225. These are our new points and how we are going to graph our function. The last step is to find your starting points and your ending point. You're always grabbing this section here, 2 times x minus whatever. My starting point, 2 times x minus 45 equals 0. You're going to set it to equal to find your starting point. Divide by 2, add 45, and my starting point is now 45. My ending point, so that means my whole shift is going to determine from 45 to 225. And how I found that, again, same one, 2 times x minus 45. You're going to set it equal to 360 because that's the end of your whole period wave. So divide by 2, 180. So add by 45, I get 225, and that's my ending point for my whole wave. Now, we can go ahead and start graphing. My amplitude, my maximum number is 3, my minimum number is -3. I'm going to have my lines right here. If I look at this, 45, 90, 135, 45, 90, it looks like there's a pattern of 45. So 45, 90, 135, 180, 225, I think it kept going, 270, 360, you don't have to do this, I just add more, but you need at least between 45 and 225. Now, you have your whole graph here, you have what it is, it's a sine graph, so according to sine, you start at 0, you go up, 0, down. So we're going to start at 0, that means right here at the x-axis, but we're not starting at the origin, we're going to start right here at 45, so 45 is 0. Then we go up to the next one, which is 90. Next one is 135, we're going to go 0. Next is 180, I'm going to go down. 225, and we go up. So now, our wave consists of that. We can keep on going because we notice there's a pattern. They're actually using all increments of 45 degrees. But in this case, this is good enough. This is showing you your wave of graph is shifted 45 degrees to the right from the original graph. Number 5, So if we look at example 5, I'm going to try to go through this. Minimum, maximum, that's your number in front. So we have minimum or maximum of 3 over 4. Minimum of 3 over 4, and maximum of negative 3 over 4. So now we have here a positive number. That means we're starting up for cosine. Keep in mind it's a cosine. The pattern for that, I have it over there. It's up, 0, down, 0, up, 0, down, 0. We have to find a period. So it's 2 times 180 divided by b. In this case, b is, oh, I forgot to explain this part right here. We have y equals 3, 4 times cosine times 2x plus 120. Keep in mind when we have the regular pattern, we always need a b. So we need a number outside of the parentheses. In this case over here, we don't have that. So we have to kind of find a way, meaning we factor greatest common factor. So I'm going to factor out here, according to 2x and 120, they have a common factor of 2. I factor out the 2, I get x plus 60. So keep in mind, you need a b, you need a number in front of there. So that means factor out a number so you can have that. Here, my period is 2 times 180 divided by b. b is now 2, that's what we found. You get 180. Now you're going to multiply 180 into 4 parts. So now we get 1/4 of 180. It's exactly like what we did before. We're going to get 45, 90, 135, and 180. So find our minimum maximum values. We find our period, divide into 4 parts. Now let's talk about our shift. That's where it gets a little bit more difficult. We have a shift of plus 60. Remember, it's not plus 120 because we factored out the 2. So we can have what our period wave looks like. So we have positive 60. If we go back to what we had here, if it's x plus h, you're shifting to the left. That means you're subtracting you're subtracting every factor by whatever you're shifting. So here, I am shifting 60 units. Remember, we always start at 4. I just put the 0 up there because it keeps in mind that I have to start at 4. So now you're subtracting by 60 to every factor here. We have a shift, so it's not going to look like your normal graph. We're going to shift it 60 degrees to the left, so the whole graph is going to shift this way. So now you find your shift. It's 60 degrees to the left, so that means you're subtracting 60 degrees to every point right here of your 4 parts, well, including the 0 here as well. So 0 minus 60, negative 60. 45 minus 60, I get negative 15. 90 minus 60, 30. 135 minus 60, I get 75. And then last one is 180 minus 60, and I get 120. I find my shift. I'm subtracting 60 to every one of my numbers here. These are my new set of parts, and that's where I'm going to graph at each of these points. Last one, we're looking at our starting point, ending point, because remember now we're not starting from 0 to 360, it's shifting. So then you have what you had here, b times x minus h. You're going to have that set it equal to 0 and solve for it. So here, 2 times x plus 60 divided by 2, subtract by 60. Your starting point is at negative 60. Your ending point, same expression. Now you're setting it equal to 360. Divide by 2, 180. Subtract, you get 120. So your 2 points are negative 60. That's where you're starting. And you're ending at 120. Now let's go ahead and graph. If you look at this, we originally started with increments of 45, 90, so increments of 45. But now if we look at the numbers here, we have 60, 15, 30, 75, 120. We have so many different numbers going on. The best way I can tell you to label them is there's a 45, increments of 45, or increments of 30, increments of 60, increments of 90, and there's different increments, but make sure you keep in mind you're using increments of whatever is on the unit circle. So anything on those degrees, you can make increments of that number. So in this case, to make it as, try to make it as simple as possible. I'm going with increments of 30 because we have 60, 15, 30, 75, 120. We have too much going on. I can't just use 45 there. So I'm going to start here with negative 60, negative 30, 0, 30, 60, 90, 120, 150. I'm going to go on just for a little bit. Just going to keep it there for now, just for the sake of the video. Now here, we have a shift. We have to focus here, which is our increments. That's where we're going to label all these points. It's a cosine. So cosine, you start with up, 0, down, 0. So starting at negative 60, not at 0 anymore because we're shifting. So at negative 60, we're starting with, oh, I forgot to label my amplitude. Amplitude is 3 over 4, negative 3 over 4. And that's from number 1. So I should have labeled that in the beginning. Now, you start at negative 60. You start at your top point. That's right there. Next one is negative 15. We're not going with the increments of the pattern. That's why you have to make sure you're following every step here, because if you give me just every dot, you're giving me just random dots there, it's not correct. Here, next one is 15. So it's up, 0, down, 0, up, 0, down, 0. So up, then my 0 point is at negative 15. That's right here. My next one is at 130. So up, 0. We're going to go down. Remember, at minimum, maximum points only. At 75, we're going to go back at 0. It's going to be right here. And then 120, we're going up. So now we have a graph that looks like that. And we can keep on going, but for the sake of time, we're just doing that there. The next video, I'll have 2 more examples just like this, and then you'll have an assignment to do to start graphing each and every one of these. But keep in mind, go step by step. If you need to, you can screenshot that section right there next to my little birdies. But just make sure you have that in mind. Love you guys. Miss you guys.